Welcome to the People's Guild with me, Wasco, and my co-host, B Jangles.
We're a couple of Splinterlanders that love exploring all things Pretoria with a wide variety of guests from all across the community and Splinterlands universe.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
All right, welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another wonderful guest. This week we are joined by yet another team member from the Splinterlands crew. A man of a million names, Joseph John, Breakingbenjamin, Joey, previously just Benjamin. We heard a little bit of background about that name, and I'm sure we'll rehash as the episode goes on. But he is correct me if I'm wrong, Joey, but the lead narrative, lead lore.
Narrative lead.
Narrative lead. Yep, that's took the words right out of my mouth. But yeah, we're super excited to dive into everything that this guy does in Splinterlands and beyond. And yeah, just want to welcome you to the show, man. Appreciate you making time to hop on with us.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
Cool, man. So yeah, it's quite fun. That the reason why we kind of got you on was I just kind of threw out a message in Discord. I just read that Arkemis lore, and I just said, oh, it'd be great to get that guy on the pod and just chat with him. And luckily, Gene Pool hooked us up. So that's like how we ended up on this podcast today. But I'd like to kind of just go back a little bit and ask you about just when you were a little bit younger, because I read on your bio, your mom used to read you the Golden Book series.
That's right.
And it definitely hit a chord with me because when I was young as well, my father used to, he used to read books with me. But I always remember he used to make up these stories about a soldier. He's called Mickey, and he used to fight he's in World War II. So like when I was young as well, I used to have that, great opportunity I felt. And I've got a boy now, he's 8 years old, and I still religiously read with him. I've got like a class as well, and with my students as well. I find that's one of my favorite times of the class where we get to read the story, because they just, I don't know, like they just come alive, and just the words just hit something with them. So I was going to ask you, like, how important do you feel it was to have had that opportunity, like your mom reading you the stories at such a young age, and how important do you think it is for children to hear these stories?
So I think it's extremely important. Growing up, my bio on my other website, I read a lot of Golden Books, and I mean, just growing up, pretty much every moment was consumed with reading. Golden Books, Party Boys. Whenever we go over to my grandparents, my grandpa had all these Louis L'Amour books, which are old Westerns, and I'd go there and I'd grab one off the shelf and I'd read it, and I'd read through it and take it home with me. And when we finished, bring it back and read another one. I started reading, I read Cujo at a very young age, and I've been hooked on Stephen King ever since. My bookshelf next to me, I have every single Stephen King book in first edition. All the ones are in hardcover that I could get. A couple of them are autographed. So yeah, I've read a lot of books. And then when my daughter came along, she's 5 now, but we would read to her every night from when she was born, help her fall asleep. And eventually she one day she opened up a book and started reading it. And I think she was 3, and it was just bizarre because I had no idea this girl could read. Because we'd read, she'd be sitting on my lap, I'd be holding the book up, and she'd be looking at it as I read. So it's like she was teaching herself to read as I was reading to her. So she's 5 now, and she just reads like incredibly well. I remember like being in high school and listening to some people trying to read, and you get to an end of a sentence, and they would like stop, and it would be all disjointed, and you're like, how does this person not know how to read as a senior? And my 5-year-old daughter can read better than most of these people. So yeah, I love books, and I'm hoping to impart that on my daughter. I love to write. Obviously I'm the narrative lead for Splinterlands. I wrote a couple books in my spare time. I don't know. I love it.
Great intro, man. And I just Random question here: Are you going to start your daughter with Cujo? Was that the initial bedtime stories?
Yeah, no, probably not. We'll start something a little tamer.
So, you mentioned you wrote some books in your part time. So I was looking at them as well, and they seem really interesting. And
Yeah, they're really good.
They're what?
I said they're really good.
But I was just quite interested because I know you mentioned before, like about the Hardy Boys and the three detectives. So, are your books kind of inspired a bit by? Do you think a bit by them? Because in your books, those guys are. I think Titus is the main character. He also is kind of like trying to find out something that's happened, right? Like this about the mission to Mars. Do you think like that was kind of inspired anything like by what you have like your early years?
So I don't think it's so much. I mean, obviously, all the reading that I've done over the course of my life has been an inspiration for where I am now and what I've written. But I think each one of my books has been kind of inspired by something that happened in my life. So my first book was called The Eighth Day, and that was actually inspired by true events. I was sitting at I think we're at Disney World, and I was with my wife. We'd only been married a couple years at the time, and we're sitting there having some hamburgers at one of those eat out joints, and this guy walks by, and he just tosses his napkin down on the on the counter next to us, and I glanced over, and I was like, I thought that guy was handing me a note. My wife was like, I did too, and I was like, what if we grabbed it and he had written something on it like they're watching you, and she laughed. And of course, I grabbed it and flipped it over, and he had not written "They're watching you" on it, but in my book he had. So my book is about this dude who sitting in a restaurant, and a guy comes into the restaurant and looks over the table at him and says, "They're watching you." And the main character's name is Sean Jaff, and he's like, "Sorry." He's, what do you say to something like that? And the guy says, "Your name's not Sean Jaff. You're not from Ohio, and you're not an investment broker. Come with me, and I'll tell you everything." And the guy ends up getting killed, and Sean Jaff is trying to figure out what the heck's going on. That's kind of the first book, The Eighth Day. And then my second book was Democracy. It started off being called Democracy Inc. I changed the name to When Titans Fall. I will probably change it back for reasons we can get into later. But the whole inspiration for the book was I'm seeing the rise of these corporations in America, where you have these giant corporations that are becoming super powerful, and you hear about lobbyists for corporations being able to influence the government, and it's almost like legalized bribery. And I thought, well, what would happen if one day these corporations just kind of took over our government and they became the government? So that's Democracy Inc. So in these books, there's these 8 corporations that run America, and the main character is the son of one of the CEOs. There's a conspiracy about the Mars mission, so he's trying to figure out what's going on and what happened to his mom, who was on one of those missions. And he's kind of this cynical anti-hero. He's not a really nice guy at the beginning of the book, but over the course of the book, he grows as a person. He learns that to care for other people and have other things that are more important than just himself. So that's kind of the idea behind my second book. And then nice. the third book would be part 2 of that, called The Outlands, and just continuing the story of Titus. I plan to make it a trilogy at some point.
Cool. Very cool. I'm curious, the authoring career it sounds like is something that's kind of blossomed as you progress through your career, or pre-retirement, I should say. And my assumption is that authoring has kind of taken the front seat once you found yourself retired. I'm curious, Joey, what was that creative journey looking like at the time you were working a full-time position? Were you kind of writing short stories? Were you writing blogs? Were you kind of flexing that creative muscle throughout your life, and this is kind of the culmination of that?
Yeah, so I've been writing stories my whole life. I never really finished anything. So I'd like write a couple chapters and I'd never finish it. So when I started the 8th day, it took me probably maybe 10 years to write the book, just because I just didn't sit down. I didn't have an outline for it. I kind of made it up as I went, and I'd work on it whenever I had a chance. So at one point, sometime in the middle of the book, I said, "Can I actually write a whole story and do it?" So I'm like, I'm just going to write a short story, see if I can get it done. So it ended up being called Karma. So it was a short story about a guy who did some bad things, and karma came back to bite him in the ass. But that ended up getting published in a magazine. So I was like, yeah, I can write a story. It can be good. It can get published. So let me finish my book. So I wrote the 8th day. I finished it in 2008 when I was in Iraq, and then it just kind of sat on my hard drive for quite a while as I ruminated on it, tried to figure out how to edit it, make it better. I ended up reading some books on writing. Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, Story by Robert McKee, and The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. So if there's anybody that's interested in story or story structure, those are my 3 go-to books. I highly recommend them. And I realized that at the end of the 8th day, there was no main antagonist. There was nobody that my character was really up against, and he didn't make the decisive action. So usually in a story, you want your hero to be the hero of the story. They do something decisive. They save the day. And at the end of the 8th day, my character just kind of sat in the back while events unfolded around him and the story ended. So I ended up doing a complete rewrite at the end of the book. It turned out really well. I mean, I think I did a lot of advertising for it. It became a bestseller on Amazon. I did not become rich. I think it was a bestseller because I spent all my proceeds on advertising. So I did a good job marketing it. And then, yeah. So my second book did not take 10 years to write. My second book I wrote in about 6 or 7 months. So what I did was I sat down and I learned story structure, what a 3-act structure is, what the setup is, what the inciting incident is, the climax, the B story, and then how a book traditionally ends. So I plotted the whole thing out. I figured out this is chapter 1, this is chapter 72, plotted it out, and then I wrote it, got it done within a year, published it, pretty happy with it. Decided to write the second one. I got about halfway done with my second book. Then I started to get involved in Splinterlands, and as I went down the rabbit hole, I contacted Nate, and so I've ended up working for Splinterlands full time right now. Putting my second book's kind of on hold now until I figure out the proper work-life balance. Working from home, having my daughter coming in every few minutes to say hi. So I right now I'm tending to work until quite late at night, just to not only to make sure I get everything done, but also because I really like what I do at Splinterlands. I want to make sure that we're successful. And we have a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of stuff going on. And it's kind of my passion right now, but I would like to have that balance at some point where I can do Splinterlands during the day and work on my next novel at night.
That's really great point. Like you make, like you weren't kind of sure about that initial book, but you just did that small article, right? I think that's really a good example, right?
Just to prove to myself, I can actually finish a story. I'm not going to stop after a couple chapters. So,
yeah. So, like, I also saw you you joined the military, and you went to West Point. So I was just wondering, like, what inspired you to join the army?
Well, my grandpa was in World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. In World War II, he was actually a German spy. So he had like a fake ID, said he was from somebody or other, and he was a mechanic. So he actually went to Germany and he lived in Germany. He was in what would be basically the precursor to the CIA. I heard a lot of stories from my grandpa. My dad was a corporal in Vietnam. But really, I mean, what inspired me to join the military was I was in high school and I got a pamphlet in the mail that said, "Hey, come and join West Point." So this looks kind of cool. It'd be kind of neat to. West Point's pretty prestigious. So, I went into study hall and I showed my friends. I'm like, "Did you guys get this in the mail?" None of them. They're like, "Oh, none of us got anything from West Point." I'm like, "I'm thinking about applying." And they're like, "You'd never make it at West Point." So I'm like, I swear in this. I'm like, bull pooey. And so I applied, and I went to West Point. And that was the impetus right there.
I'll show them.
And so I went to West Point for 4.5 years. I almost did not graduate. I've recently learned that one of my people are motivated by different things, and personally, I'm motivated by praise. I like to be told when I do well, and that things are doing good. Great job, Joey. You're doing great. I love it. I'm not motivated when people tell me I'm stupid and how horrible of a job I'm doing. And that's kind of what West Point does. At least I felt like I was broken down there and torn apart, and I started trying, and by the end I had given up. So I got held back 6 months for discipline problems. My tactical officer, that's a major who was in charge of my company of cadets, told me I'd never make it in the military. I had a bad attitude. I had the most disciplined tours in my entire class. So when you get in trouble, you have to hold a rifle and you walk back and forth on, it's called central area. So you walk back and forth until you walk off your hours for getting in trouble, whether it's turning paper in late, not wearing your jacket to class. One of the things I did was I paid off my account a day late when I got my class ring. So I ended up walking over 200 hours back and forth in the central area. Got held back 6 months, joined the military, and spent 23 years in the military. I think I was fairly successful. I don't know. I retired as a lieutenant colonel March of last year, and shortly after getting hired to work for Splinterlands.
Cool.
Well,
Man, I'm really fascinated by your grandfather's story. Is that something that you plan to touch on with your writing skills, or are we going to hear the saga of Grandpa Joey?
My grandpa got Alzheimer's when I was young. So, I mean, not young, but like when I was in high school, I guess, when I went to West Point. So I didn't get a chance to really pick his brain and learn everything that I could from him. I've got a lot of his letters that he wrote to my grandma. I've got a lot of his what do you call it, souvenirs from the war. He liberated a couple of concentration camps. So he really saw some amazing things, did some amazing things, horrible things, saw, not did. But yeah, I wish I knew more about my grandpa. That's the bottom line.
yeah, I my wife's father, he was in the military too, and he was in China. My wife's Taiwanese, so he was in Chiang Kai-shek's army that retreated to Taiwan. And my Chinese is not amazing, but it's good enough to communicate and speak about general things. Comes to politics, probably not, but then again, in English it's not too great either. But I always wanted to speak to him about his time, but I was always, and I just never did, but I was always reluctant to ask him about, because in my mind, I just want to just find out, like, what was it like when when you were retreating? What was it like coming back over? But I was just worried that it would just stir memories inside him that he didn't want to kind of open up to. And part of me, I still always regret not asking him, but part of me always think, okay, maybe it was the best not to do that. But in your experience, like, are you, like, I wouldn't say enjoy talking about your time in the military, but are you like open to talking about it when people ask you about it?
So, I mean, I am. I didn't get shot at and see my friends get killed. I was a pilot for 15 years. I flew Chinooks, the big ones, 2 rotor blades.
Yeah.
One tour in Iraq. I worked in Al Faw Palace, which is one of Saddam's palaces. So it's pretty cushy assignment.
You worked in it.
Yeah, so I was, I don't know if you know who General Petraeus is, but he was the commander of multinational forces Iraq. I was his protocol officer and command aviation chief. So I was in charge of coordinating the flights of all the general officers and Iraqi generals in the theater of operations. And then anytime General Petraeus had an event in Alpha Palace, I had cooks, I had IT dudes who worked for me. I ran the admin staff that processed all the medals submissions for medals of honor, which would be approved or disapproved by General Petraeus. Then I had a couple Army drivers for driving dudes back and forth from the airfield.
Wow.
So I was an aviator for 15 years. That was part of that. I mean, we get indirect fire every now and then, and that wasn't fun, but luckily I never got blown up. And then for my last 7 years, I was an operations analyst. So basically, I usually work directly for the commander of whatever unit I happen to be in, and I would look at the employment of U.S. forces on the battlefield, what effect they were having, whether it was effective or not, and how to optimize that employment to get better results. My last assignment was up at Tampa with Special Operations Command. So I had it's called a secret compartmentalized information clearance. So we did a lot of really cool stuff. Super happy to end my career doing that, and kind of going out with a bang. It was a lot of fun.
Well, oh man, I've got lots of questions about that. But like, what was it like then? The first time you walked into like Saddam's palace, was it kind of a strange feeling?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to write a book about my time in Iraq. I have one chapter written, but so when I went there, I get on the aircraft and I fly. We fly from the U.S. to Germany, and then from Germany to Kuwait. You hang out in Kuwait so you can get a flight to Iraq. So you fly to Iraq, and I remember the aircraft coming in, and it's coming into the it's coming in for the landing, and all of a sudden we're banking left and we're banking right. I'm like, holy crap, are we taking fire? I'm like freaking out. I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. But no, that's normal. That's just evasive maneuvering as you come into land, just in case somebody shoots at you. We land safely, and my heart's pounding. I'm like, oh my God, I almost died. And the ramp comes down, and we all get off the aircraft, and I'm like looking around. I'm like, I'm gonna get shot at. Do I need to run for cover? And there's this Navy lieutenant. He's just leaning against a Humvee. He's got his cap back, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, dudes? Come on, I'll give you a ride back." I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was not quite what I was expecting. I didn't know what to expect when I got there, and we rode the Humvee to the palace. I lived in a trailer by what's called the JVB Hotel, Joint Visitors Bureau, which is basically celebrities would come. So I would go to breakfast and I'd eat lunch with Derek Jeter or some rock band. I got to hang out with Everclear, which is actually my favorite band. So I should probably be called Everclear, not Breakingbenjamin. I got to hang out with Art Alexakis and his group, Toby Keith. I forget his name. The president from 24, the melty dude from Terminator. I got my picture taken with all those guys. So that was my tour in Iraq.
All while living by the palace, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Cool.
Wow.
So experiences may vary. And my book was going to be called will be called Echelons Above Reality. So it's kind of like what it's like for these, in the military, we call them POGs, like people who just stayed on the FOB or FOBITs, forward operating base, and didn't really go out and see combat. And my biggest concern was whether General Petraeus would like his lobster that we made him for lunch. So,
and what was it like? You said you were a pilot. You flew the Chinook, and what was it like that first time? Like I'm sure you did lots of simulation, but like, what was it like the first time you just pulled back the throttle and got that big baby into the sky? Was your heart pounding?
So I'm not gonna lie. I think pretty much every time I took off, my heart pounded. As you're taking off and you're at the controls and the ground is disappearing away beneath you, you're like, holy crap! I don't know if maybe it was just me, but yeah, every time I got an adrenaline rush, and I kind of loved it. It was pretty cool. And once you're up in the sky, it goes away. You're just get kind of bored flying straight and level as you're flying around. But I mean, every takeoff was kind of a rush for me, and I loved it.
Well,
The Chinook missions, if my understanding correct, that's mostly a cargo chopper. Is that right?
It mostly is. We also did some high altitude insertions. So like in Afghanistan, there's a lot of places where the Blackhawks and Apaches can't get to. So there's one pretty famous picture of a Chinook doing a pinnacle landing. So basically you have this is audio only, so the listeners can't see, but you have this pinnacle and the Chinook comes down and you touch down with your back wheels like this, and the front are floating in the air, and then everybody can kind of unload off the back of the Chinook. And there's a pretty famous picture of it, and that was my unit when we first deployed to Afghanistan.
well, what was your, like, from all your time in the military? What do you like? I've mentioned this before. We had someone else on the podcast, Rick on the Mountain. He also served in the military, and in Taiwan, I don't know if you're sure, but they have conscription.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something my boy will have to do, or he will have to make the choice. I presume he will have the choice, whether he does or not, because he's got a British passport and the Taiwanese one. But like in my mind, I would like him to do the military service. To be honest, it's only 4 months over here at the moment. Depending, I think if you go in the Navy, it goes to 6. If you go in the Air Force, it's 9. But in the back of my mind, it's something that I would advise him to do. I just feel if to get that discipline, whether you like it or not, would be beneficial for him long term. But would you recommend someone to join the military?
I would. I mean, from my experience, I was pretty immature graduating from high school and college even. And I learned a lot being in the military, and not only just learning how to be an adult and have responsibility and take care of things and have other people dependent on you, but the camaraderie that you have in the military. That was probably my favorite part of it, was working with soldiers. Those bonds and those friendships you make, they'll last you your whole life. I still keep in touch with people from college that I went to school with. I mean, we all served in the military together, and then all the different assignments that I went to. And even if it had been just 4 months, I feel like you grow a lot as a person and learn a lot from that experience.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's kind of what I would imagine as well, or what I would hope that he would even like gain some kind of skill, right? Like I'm sure, and I've heard stories of people. I know people in France who went in the military, like they also had conscription, and they just sit around and watch TV all the time. But I just feel that if you're in a place for a certain amount of time, like to not take advantage of that would just be a waste. So yeah, I'm hoping to.
I agree.
So how, like, you yeah, another interesting thing I read, your bio is great actually. It's kind of loads of
Thank you.
juicy tidbits. But you also there's some really funny bits as well. And you mentioned about when you were in West Point, that's when you started to write poetry.
Yeah. So I was just kind of depressed. Wasn't very happy while I was there. One time my tactical officer came in my room and he's like, "Cadet Schmerdla, do you apply yourself to anything here at West Point?" And I was like, "No, sir." And he kind of was taken aback by that. I think he wasn't expecting that. And he said, he's like, "Why not?" I said, "Because I pretty much hate it here." He's like, "Well, why do you want to graduate? Why do you want to join the military?" And well, as a junior at West Point, you go out and you serve in the with a regular unit for, I can't remember what it was, like 4 weeks or something. And I loved it, working with soldiers. I worked with the field artillery unit. We went to the field. just the whole mission, working with soldiers, not having to, I don't know if you know anything about West Point, but not having to make sure your shirts are lined up and spaced evenly in the closet and your socks are taped down so they don't roll around in the drawer, having to wipe down your sink every time you wash your hands or brush your teeth. It wasn't fun for me. And then constantly getting yelled at for every time I didn't button my shirt up correctly or had a small wrinkle in the sleeve. Anyway, so part of the way that I dealt with that was writing poetry. And it was pretty depressing poetry because I was not very happy at the time. But I wrote a lot of poems. It helped me deal with what I was feeling and with my emotions. And I don't know, writing helped me get through a kind of a dark time in my life, if you will.
Mm. Why did you decide on poetry? Was it just a way like for you to kind of express like how you were feeling at that time, as opposed to writing like articles or songs or something like that?
I guess poetry is more emotional. Like I can write from the heart and what I'm feeling a lot easier in stanzas and verses, vice a story about a person going through the same thing. It was easier for me to spew what I was feeling onto the page.
Were these poetic ventures, were these purely for
me,
for you to find that like cathartic process to relieve yourself of this stuff? Was any of this ever shared with anybody else?
No, I never shared it with anyone. I probably have it packed up somewhere, but I've never shared it.
Yeah, that was my next question. Have you hung on to your poetry? Is that something that you plan to ever revisit? And
yeah, maybe someday. I don't know. It was pretty depressing. So the one I remember, I'll see if I can remember a verse from one of them. So it goes, staring in the mirror at a stranger I've grown to love. He does anything I want him to. He'll do anything for you. So I smile and he smiles back, a sick and twisted grin, eyes that beg and plead. What do you want from me? I can't look away. He looks me in the eyes. No, I've messed it up. But it was something like that. So you can tell it was pretty dark, and it was just for me. And now for you and all the listeners.
Well, like so how long ago did you write that? It's amazing you can remember.
I wrote it in my 20s. I'm 47 now. I do not read it that way anymore. So pretty happy with the way my life has gone. I enjoyed my service for 23 years. I don't want anybody to think that, oh man, this guy's a sad man.
Oh no.
And happily married for over 20 years. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I'm 47. That's difficult at times, but she is the light of my life, and I couldn't be happier with where I am at this point in my adventure.
Beautiful, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing. When I hear you recite that stanza, that verse, I actually hear a little bit of hope in that. I can certainly hear the kind of dark place that you were coming from, but there does sound, there's some silver lining in there, I think. Maybe that's writer's bias where, you're remembering your raw emotion from that point in time. But as a listener, without knowing, obviously I can't understand what it was that you were going through, but I do hear a tinge of hope on those verses.
Cool.
I wonder, like you mentioned about like how strict they were with with your shirt and your jacket, and is there any part of you that thinks it's justified them to be like that? It sounds.
I don't know. In retrospect, no, I don't think so. It's a bunch of kids teaching a bunch of kids how to be officers in the military, and it was ridiculous. Like one of the things I got in trouble for is not wearing my jacket to class, which I thought was ridiculous. Every day I'd go to class. You have to uniform of the day is class, whatever, with your jacket on. So I go to class. I'd walk with my friends, and they wouldn't have their jacket on. They'd be like, "Why are you wearing a jacket?" Like, it's the uniform of the day. And so they dragged me every day. So finally one day I was like, fine, I won't wear my jacket. And I get back to my room. Well, my tactical officer happened to be looking out the window that day and saw me walking to class without my jacket on. So I got back to my room and I had a I think it's called a 2-1. It's been so long I forget. It was basically a disciplinary write-up and said, oh, you have to walk 5 hours on the area back and forth because you didn't wear your jacket to class. It's great.
Yeah, I think like to someone who has never served, it just seems very.
Military is not like that. I mean, when I joined the military, it's about the mission. It's about working together as a team. It's about taking care of the soldiers under you. I was an officer, so I had sergeants and privates and such under me, and as I went up in rank, I had lieutenants and captains and such under me as well. So having that mission and having people that you're responsible for their well-being, not just professionally but also personally. It's kind of the whole package when you're in the military, and that's really what I love so much about it. One of the greatest compliments I got was when I was in Iraq. An NCO came up to me and he's like, "Hey, sir, were you prior enlisted?" Which means were you a sergeant or a private or something? And I was like, "No, why?" And he said, "Well, you just relate really well to the young enlisted soldiers. I thought you must have been enlisted before." And that was like the best compliment I could have received. I'll never forget that. It was amazing. I remember when I was a company commander at Fort Rucker, I had a sergeant who was having marital problems, and so he comes to me. I was a young captain. I don't know. I was mid-20s, so it's like marriage counseling is part of your job. So he comes in and we're talking about his family and the problems he's having, and he's thinking about getting divorced. So I'm like, these are all problems that I have. That my first sergeant was in there, and he was like, these are all problems that I've had. And we're like, this is normal. You don't need to be getting divorced. You need to talk to your wife about it. Marriage counseling. We just we talked through it with him, and he'd come in every now and then to talk about his problems and what he was going through. And it was I don't know, it was probably 10 years later, I ran into the same guy at when I was transitioning to become an operations analyst, and I ran into him on base or on post. On the Army, it's called a post, and the Air Force is called a base. So I ran into him on post, and when I knew him originally, he was a young private. Now he's a senior NCO, a sergeant first class, and he's with his wife, and he's got all these kids, and he just says, "Hey, sir, it's me," and we shook hands, we hugged it out, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. And I don't know if I had any part in that or not, but it felt good to see him with his wife, with his family, with these kids, and think maybe I had a small part in helping this guy find his way in life. So
what a cool story, man. You just never know what that just being heard can do for somebody. So I certainly wouldn't sell myself short if I were you, in terms of the impact. We just never know. But yeah, what a cool story, man.
It also just feels like such a contrast to, like, you talking about West Point, to the time in your military. Like, the military just feels like they treat you like as a human, right?
Yeah.
And like there's so much, like you say, like working together. Like as soon as you said that, it's like, well, that's how things get created. That's how things work, right? In the military, in business, in school, people working together. But compare it to like what you're saying about West Point, it's just like, it's like trying to break your soul.
That's what I felt like. I mean, maybe other people had different experiences, but
yeah. Just a question as well. Like, does West Point have a star fort?
Does it have a what?
A star fort. A fort in the shape of a star.
No.
Okay. I know. I'm just kind of, because I'm looking into like star forts around the world, and they're just, if you after the podcast you can have a look.
Okay.
They're really.
So
the context is Tartaria, right? Westcol.
Yeah.
So it's built on. It's an old military. It used to be, I think it used to be a garrison. I can't remember, but it's built on the Hudson River in New York. Just a bunch of old barracks and academic classrooms.
It looks an amazing building, though, eh? Like,
yeah, it's beautiful. We used to say it was a great place to visit, a horrible place to be.
So how did you make that? you mentioned you've been retired for a year. How have you transitioned from the military to civilian life? Was it kind of an easy adjustment? Was it just
Yeah,
like,
I grew my hair out. I haven't cut my hair since I've been retired. I did cut my beard. I showed you my Splinter card art. I did have a giant beard at one point. It got a little too crazy, and I had to cut it off. I may try to grow it out a little more cleanly. But yeah, it was wild. My whole life I've had short hair. I just wanted to go bonkers. But seriously, so
Fortunately, you've got some left to grow out, man.
yeah, a little bit. My forehead's a little higher than it was when I was a kid. It is what it is, as they say.
Yeah.
But one of the cool things about retiring or even transitioning out of the military is there's this program called I don't even remember what it's called, but it's basically it's like an internship, and you can go work for a civilian company for a while to kind of help transition you from the military to civilian life. So as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Special Operations Command, I had 7 contractors working under me, and we were responsible for providing the commanding general with advice on the employment of special operations forces around the globe to defeat or counter our problem sets, which I won't go into detail on that because I don't think I'm supposed to, and the CIA may bust in and drag me off this podcast if I do. So I had all this responsibility. So when I transitioned out of the military, I worked in a pool store, and I filled chlorine jugs and I tested people's pool water. And the Army paid me for like 6 months. So I ended up working for my brother-in-law. He owns some pool stores here in Northport, and it was just a way to transition. I think normally it's supposed to be give you some skills that you can use in the civilian world, and but I got a pool now, so I can test my own pool water. That's nice. But yeah, so it was a nice break. I did that for 6 months. Realized I never want to work in retail. I did yell at a customer one time because he was being a jerk, and but yeah, so I did that, and then when that was over, actually that's when I started working for Splinterlands. So like when there was a downtime in the store, I'd be over in the corner writing lore for Chaos Legion cards. And then, when that time was up, I retired from the military. And then I had, I think it was 90 days of paid leave. So I had 3 months where I was still getting paid by the military. At that point, Nate had hired me full time. I started as a contractor for Splinterlands. Nate had hired me on full time. And so when I finally stopped being paid by the military, I already had my job with Splinterlands, and I couldn't be happier. My original intent was to retire from the military and write full time, but I mean, I'm cool with putting a hold on my books for a while. I really love Splinterlands. I love the stories that we write, so I'm still having fun doing this. Nate is an amazing boss. I told him that. I forget your original question. I'm thinking I'm way off topic now, but I told Nate at Splinterfest that I went to a school that's supposed to build leaders of character, and it's supposed to create these amazing leaders. But I don't think I've had a better leader than Nate. He's just a great dude to work for. He has extremely high standards, but he's not a dick about it. He's very personable, and he's very clear and articulate. You know what he wants, and I don't know. I couldn't be happier doing this.
Yes, that's great, man. So, can you talk about how this relationship with Splinterlands started? How did you meet
sure.
Nate?
So, when I was at the Special Operations Command, me and a couple buddies got into crypto, reverse a little bit. I got into Bitcoin very early. I got it for $500 per Bitcoin. So I was super into crypto. And then as I'm approaching my retirement, I made some friends at SOCOM, and crypto was like busting off, and we're like, we should somehow leverage crypto to do good for veterans. So we started a project. We tried to do a project, and it didn't really take off. But in the meantime, I started researching different crypto projects. And I had a friend I actually met with. I don't know if you guys have heard of Barnbridge, but I met with the guy who founded Barnbridge. and he got me into it's called Fluff World. So I invested in some NFTs that they had been working with. And then I started looking at other projects. So I looked at Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Atlas, Splinterlands, Axie Infinity, and I dabbled in each one of them. But the only one that really hooked me was Splinterlands. The collectability, the card games. Oh, I also did what's that one? Gods Unchained, which is a lot. The games are just too freaking long for me. I don't have I maybe have the patience. I don't have the time to sit there and go turn-based card games when I've got a family and a daughter that needs my attention. Splinterlands was perfect for me. Being able to submit my battle. It happens in a couple minutes. My wife's not sitting there waiting for me to finish so she can talk to me. So yeah, I really got into it. So I invested pretty heavily into Splinterlands before I started working for the company. Made my way up to champion lead. I started Plan B, the guild. We're doing pretty good. So I was a player before I was an employee. So when Nate, I think it was on Discord, Nate did a call for writers. I applied. I sent him some examples of my writing from Democracy Inc. or When Titans Fall, depending on what title you look at. He liked it. I got hired part-time as a contractor. And then as my retirement approached, Nate offered me a full-time job as the narrative lead. So I got promoted from narrative designer to narrative lead. And that's kind of what I do now for Splinterlands.
Very cool, man. When can you kind of give us a little bit of context in terms of dates? So you found Splinterlands, entered Splinterlands.
I would say July 2021 is when I started. Maybe it was August. It was July or August. Chaos, Untamed was sold out. Everything was sold out. Prices were super high. I think I bought SPS at 25 cents. I sold a Bitcoin and I put it all into Splinterlands. I sold my house in Tampa when we moved down. I put half the proceeds in the Splinterlands from that. So I put quite a bit of money into Splinterlands. And then everything else I've put into the house here. But so August, January, February, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. So yeah, I think it was January of 2022 is when I got hired full time. So I was part-time from August to January, and then full-time January 22 up till now.
Cool. And when you came in, the current kind of lore project, narrative project was Chaos Legion at the time. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I got pulled in, I think the only thing really we were working on was the lore for the Chaos Legion cards. There was a couple that were writers. They're no longer with us. They're no longer with the company. We hired somebody else shortly after me. He's also British. Cal Jericho is his in-game name. If you guys know him, he's an incredible writer, incredible dude. He's also written some books. We had an editor and another part-time writer at the time. So we were all the ones working on the Chaos Legion cards, writing the lore for them. And yeah, so when I came on, we already had these are the cards. So write some lore for them. So I was kind of like jumping into the middle of things. So I'm writing lore for these cards. There wasn't really a story up until now other than the Chaos Legion is here. What does that mean? What are these cards? How are they involved? And from there, we started writing the Tome of Chaos stories. If you guys have read those, I wrote a few of them. Kind of the whole narrative team wrote them, and then at one point we stopped when the company downsized. We lost a few of our writers. Just didn't have the bandwidth to continue with along those lines. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess.
Wow. So yeah, it's really interesting with the lore, right? So what did you do to kind of prepare yourself, how did you said you guys just were just given the cards? Like, what did you guys do? Like how many people were working on it? Like how did it all come about? Like, did you have to read previous lore?
Yeah, so I was pretty familiar with the lore from Splinterlands. I got into the encyclopedia, being a kind of a bit of a nerd. I read the encyclopedia. I read the lore on the other cards. I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into. It also helped that I was one of the few writers that played the game. Some of the writers didn't even play Splinterlands; they just did the lore for it. So yeah, we used something called Monday.com, and we had a board that listed all the cards and be like, I want to do this card, this card, this card. We kind of divvy them out. Nate gave us pretty good guidance. He is, like I said, he has really high standards. So he'd be like, this is what needs to be included in the lore. This is the kind of detail we need. We need a name. This is what that name should look like. It shouldn't be this long. It shouldn't be just a generic orc sniper. It should be a Jerobo, the name of the tribe, and very specific, so you didn't step on yourself and future card sets when you're releasing similar cards. What the lore should entail. So we had story snippets and the background, what should be in that. So we'd write it, Nate would review it, he'd make adjustments and change the details, and and then eventually we'd be done with that. Is that about what you're looking for?
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like it must have been a heck of a project.
It was, but it was a lot of fun. Slow days in the pool store, I'm just sitting in the back knocking out cards, and it's just pure imagination. The artwork's done. You have this card. What's this card name? What's the story behind this card? And it's a little backwards in retrospect, but at the same time, it was a lot of fun just using our creativity. Obviously, we're taking a different approach with Rebellion. Now that we have a team in place able to work on it and come up with the stories. I've come up with the stories first, and then the cards next. But yeah.
I was just going to ask what that creative process looks like on a moving forward basis. So you guys obviously have established a pretty solid foundation with the Tome of Chaos and all of the lore that's gone into the previous edition. So moving forward, that's going to be kind of the baseline, right? And filling in the gaps with the cards and the characters from Rebellion. Is it how much of a parallel do you see in what Nate is expecting of the creative team versus what you expect of yourself in terms of writing, scripting stories, and have you kind of brought over some of the advice and the insight, I'm sure you must have, from Nate in terms of how he kind of constructs that storyline and creates those character arcs and that sort of stuff? Have you brought back into your own writing processes?
Yeah, so I used, like I told you, I listed 3 books earlier that I used to write the story structure for a book. So that's what I used to craft Rebellion. So we have the whole 3-act structure for Rebellion, and then I figured out, okay, what characters do I need to populate this story? So it's the way we did with Chaos Legion was a little backwards. We made the cards and we wrote stories about them. That's why you have things like the Crypt Beetle, which are not in any Tome of Chaos story that you've read. They're just kind of there as flavor. So I thought all the cards in Rebellion, I want them to be part of the Rebellion story. So all these cards that you see in Rebellion, as we create stories about them, they're all going to be integral to this story. And I know Nate has talked about story mode. That's one of the things that we're really pushing for. And if we can get it by Rebellion, great. If we can't, maybe it's somewhere down the road. But in an ideal world, you're going to have this story mode where you, the battle mage, are the hero of this story, and all the cards from a Rebellion you're interacting with them in this story mode, fighting battles with the good guys on your side, the bad guys opposed to you. And it's a story where you're the hero, and it's all the cards in Rebellion. We've created all the character concepts for them. We've created the artworks. I don't know, the artwork's like halfway done. But yeah, we have the story outline done all the way up until Silas wins and defeats the uprising and remains in control of the Splinterlands.
Nice, man. I love it that you are so invested in the game and you just have this passion for the game, and you're kind of writing you're kind of in control of the story of these characters. It's just really, really great to hear. And I mentioned at the start of the podcast, the reason why we're having the podcast now is because of the the Arkemis lore, and that was great. Sorry, that was great because we were just still are in the bear market, but it's just a really good message for people. And I've mentioned this on quite a few podcasts, is that definitely people should read it, and it just will. I don't know. Of course, there's like hidden meanings in there, but I just really enjoyed it, and enough to kind of it just definitely stirred something in me. But could you give us a bit of a background to that? Because I feel, and Ben as well, we both feel that is like one of the cards that could be, it's just like the sign of our times, right? It's like a sign of our times card.
So when I wrote it, I think, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure it's the first time we didn't do the background story snippet format. So I wanted to write it as a parable. I wanted it to be, a parable of what players were going through, not just in Splinterlands, but across the whole Web3 or even the traditional markets. So I wanted it to be universal, something that everyone could relate to. So when I outlined it, that's really what I had in mind. But yeah, I put a lot. There was symbology in there. There was a lot of, depending on how you read it, you might take it different ways, and that's intentional.
Well, it worked because it was you did excellent job. And like I was asking Ben today, like, is there like what other lore did he write? Because I just wanted to read and just kind of just get a bit of background myself. But yeah, you mentioned you did the Runi as well, right?
Yeah, I did the Runi too. I tried to make that funny. I know there was a lot of jokes on Tavern Chat about the pickle, so I kind of made that central to the story.
Yeah, you wasted no time introducing the pickle into the lore. I think it's the first line.
That was intentional. I also, if you look at all the traits on the Roonies, I was also the dude that named all the traits for the Runi. So you may see that stuff popping up in the lore in the future. I know one of the heads is called the Lowland Ape. I know that because I named it. And now we also have Lob Lowland is in the game. That is not a coincidence. That's on purpose. So there's a lot of things you may see on the Runi traits that we're going to be pulling into the lore, whether it's just something on lore.splinterlands.com where it's the name of a lake or a river or a jungle or whatever, or a character that you see in the future.
Yeah. No, I love. Sorry, Ben. I was just going to say about that Runi lore. Just when I read it, it's just like you have a great way of kind of just in that particular one, great way of just bringing people into that, particular kind of workplace where those two guys are working away, and then just a great ending where they just make that reunion time and bump, they're right out there kicking ass.
Yeah. So there's actually part 2 to that. I don't know if you guys have seen it or read it, but it should be on Peaked. Do you remember on Discord where we had the game, like the puzzle?
Oh yeah. So it's like the virtual escape room scavenger hunt sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So I helped them write basically the lore for that story, but there's another story that went along with it, and it is the story of what happened when that Runi busted through the door on the back of the card. So it's kind of like part 2 of that. What happened when that Runi went outside?
Right.
Chance. It's pretty. I think it's cool.
And very that's cool. Available in the Peaked.
Yeah, it should be on Peaked. If you need a link, I can hook you up later.
Cool. Yeah, you've secured 2 of the biggest cards, at least in my mind, of the last 12 months of the game with Runi and Arkemis. I think what is that process of your narrative lead? So I would imagine that you kind of get to assign folks as you see fit. But how did you get your name to the top of the hat for these 2 kind of hallmark cards within the game?
So I try to do most of the promo cards. They're kind of the big deal. So I like to take it. I like to take it on myself. So that's what I've been doing. For Vruz, I actually co-wrote that with Dan Jericho. We wrote that together, and then the next promo card that's coming out, we also wrote together.
And that promo is I'm joking.
May 2nd, right?
So because I don't have the bandwidth to do all the promo cards. We're working on Splinter lore. If you've looked at what's on there now, all the continents, I wrote everything that's on Splinter lore right now. For the factions that are coming out next, I wrote most of those. Dan helped me with a few of them, but there's right now there's 30 factions. And that should be, I mean, as soon as we get Nate to bless off on it, those will be published.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
I was just going to say, it sounds like you mentioned specifically the Crypt Beetle as just kind of being the generic no-name
I don't
character.
know. There's just some cards where it's like, why do we have this card? It's not in any story.
Sure.
But I want to be more deliberate, more intentional in future card sets when we create these cards, that everyone has a purpose, that everyone, to make you feel like you're immersed in the lore, that, oh, I know this card. This card helped me when I was traveling through the Central Fire, and we fought against the orcs in the tribe in the north, and went towards and Haven and liberated it from the Chaos Legion. And these cards were on my side, or we fought against these cards. And it's not like, where does this Crypt Beetle come from? He's in a crypt somewhere. I want people to be immersed in the game and feel like they're part of the adventure, and they're the hero or heroine.
What an exciting project to be a part of, man. You coming in, it sounds like you kind of came in at the golden age of creative ventures with Splinterlands. And, we had Nate on a couple of weeks ago, and just hearing him kind of hash out in detail at a very high level what that creative process looks like. And, he's got these incredibly ambitious goals for where Splinterlands from a creative perspective can go to. And, yeah, I told Nate specifically I would love to be kind of a fly on the wall for one of those creative meetings and just watch what that process looks like from the outside perspective.
It is super cool. So I was I don't know, this was a couple months ago, but there was one meeting in particular that has stuck with me, where we talked for about an hour of what is a vampire? How's a vampire created? Was there someone before the vampires? And it's like, I'm sitting in this meeting, we're debating, what are vampires in the Splinterlands like? What are the creatures that create them? What's the background? And I'm sitting here going, I'm getting paid to sit here and come up with lore and talk about vampires. I mean, how cool is this? It was amazing. It just struck me, and it's stuck with me ever since. And every day, every week that we sit down in these meetings, it's amazing that I'm part of this incredible team, from the leadership to my peers, the other creative leads. They're all incredible. To the people that work under me, I know anyone could step up at any moment and keep this ship going. So I'm super honored and super privileged to be part of it.
Oh man, yeah, it's just really great, and this kind of the feeling that we do get when we do speak to people about the team, that they do have their standards, but the way they get people to do what they want to do is in the correct way. Like you were just mentioning about Nate before, right? They have a way of asking you, but in still maintaining that high standard that they want.
Yeah. So in the military, I've had good bosses, I've had bad bosses. So I mean, recent example, I don't want to name names or what command I was in. So I had one boss, he was a colonel, which is, for those aren't familiar, it's one step below a general. And he would come sit down, talk to me at my desk. He would sit next to me. We'd work on PowerPoint slides, and he was very personable, very easy to get along with, always came around, asked how I was doing. And it was, I don't know, it was one of the best times that I've had in the military. And your leadership really defines your existence. I think if you don't have good leadership, it blows. And then the guy that took over for him never came by to say hi, would send snarky emails about how shitty things were, just kind of talking down. And it was same command, same environment, same peers, different leader, the entire culture changed, and it just wasn't good. But Nate is one of the guys that if I had a chance to work for him in another company, I would do it in a heartbeat. I just feel blessed to have found someone like him to work for, in a company as amazing as this. Being military, I hear horror stories about people that have retired and gone to work in corporate, where it's all stabbing in the back and trying to make yourself look better so you can move up the chain. And it's not like that at Splinterlands at all. It's everybody working together, rowing in the same direction, because they're passionate about this project. I like to think that we're passionate about each other, about helping each other succeed and do well. And yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yes. Oh man, I really appreciate you sharing the testimony, and it's we've been fortunate to speak with a handful of folks at the executive level at the team, and to hear that from somebody like yourself who reports to said executive. Yeah, it's just great testimony to everything that we've already heard, and our suspicions have been confirmed that the fabric of community at Splinterlands, it's real and it's authentic, and yeah, great stuff. Nate, I quickly want to hear your thoughts on this and what it's like from a development point of view. Nate has shared on town halls kind of the process of creation for the art, and it's not just an image; it's an image and a moving image. It's an image and it's like layers of pieces that ultimately need to be produced in order to roll out said card. Is it a similar layered approach with the lore at this point? Characters are part of a faction, part of like the greater storyline, part of the greater mythology. Is that kind of the focus of creating and scripting this lore at this point? Is when you create a character, what is his or her position in kind of the whole timeline of events, and zooming out, is all of that kind of expected with the creation of a character? Yeah, or do you guys wing it a little bit?
Yeah. So some of it, some characters we wing it, some are more deliberate. So one of the reasons I've been focusing on Splinter lore so much recently is we have these factions. Some of them are pulled from the encyclopedia, some of them are pulled from other places, but they're all part of the lore. And we didn't really have a description of what all this stuff meant. We were kind of building the ship in flight as we're moving forward with all this. So I wanted to sit down and say, this is what it means to be part of the Kingdom of Chimea, or this is what it means to be part of the Phyrexian Empire, or this is what a goblin is like, or this is what I've also created, like there's like crimson orcs and pale orcs and what I call them, ebony orcs, I think. But I created all these species and subraces and stuff to make it, to create a cohesive narrative and world that all this stuff takes place in. So when we create the cards, we're able to say, okay, this is a Silver Shield Knight. They're in the Kingdom of Chimea. We know that Silver Shield Knights can be humans or leonines or Canisans, which would be dog people. So we wanted a wide breadth of races and species, because we're a card game. We don't want them to be all humans. So it's very, very, very varied. But yeah. So for Rebellion, the way we tell this story is, see if I can say this without giving too much away, is you have this battle mage who's you, and you're part of the Rebellion. So you're traveling around Praetoria and you're interacting with these factions and these people. So yeah, it's a very delivered approach to when you go to the Kingdom of Chimea and the Silver Shield Knights. What are these people like? Who are you interacting with? These are the cards that are going to be in Rebellion. So that defines it.
So you do you mean that when Rebellion comes out, we're gonna be able to interact with these people? Is that what you're saying?
So I mean, story wise,
Story wise, okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So the intent is eventually to create a story mode where, yeah, you're actually interacting with these characters in a story, where you're the main character and you're fighting battles in story mode and progressing the story. If you've ever played like Hearthstone, I so in Hearthstone
I,
you like
I know what it is.
the raid of Naxxramas, and you fight through it and fight through it. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do with Rebellion. If not Rebellion, the next card set. If we don't do it with Rebellion, then it just becomes the stories where you're the battle mage, you're in the story, you're interacting with these characters, and they mean more to you than just a card that you put on the battlefield. They're characters that you are friends with or that you fought against, etc.
Man, you guys are taking on such a massive universe creation project with this Splinterland stuff. How do you guys, I know it's a very collaborative process that you guys go through with kind of constructing these storylines, these narratives, these characters. How do you guys continually tap into this seemingly endless pool of imagination and creativity? I mean, how much creativity, how much juice do you guys actually have in the tank? Do you guys feel like have you guys run into the notorious writer's block when it comes to creating this stuff? Is that iterative process and creative journey of working as a team kind of help you guys circumvent that writer's block completely? What is that, I guess,
So
pool of? Yeah.
So that's part of it. Part of it is working as a team to get everything done. Part of it is, I mean, for me personally, I'll speak for myself. I talked about in my first book how it took 10 years to write, and that was because I didn't plot it out. I had no clue where I was going. So obviously I'm going to have writer's block. I'm going to write myself into a corner and be like, what the hell happens next? I don't know. I need to think about it, and time passes. My second book, I plotted it out. I knew chapter 1, this happens. Chapter 2, this happens. And it's a lot easier when you know, okay, this is what I have to do to get to the next chapter. And that's what we've done with Rebellion. We've worked together to create this outline of the story starts here. This is what happens throughout the story, and this is how the story ends. So, I mean, we haven't written each piece, but we know what's gonna happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Nate's once said on the podcast, "Don't sleep on the lore," and it's something that's always like stuck with me. And I spoke to him about it on the podcast. Do you think people are sleeping on the lore, and how important will the lore be in terms of land when that starts to be available to play?
So, I mean, for the initial phases of land, I mean, it's not like huge that you know what the lore is. Eventually, as we move forward, beyond, we want it to play a larger role, especially like factions, where we've created these factions. And one of the things we're thinking about doing is, if you have, for example, 3 Knights of Chimea on your team, you might get some kind of bonus. If you have some goblins, some gobson, you might get another bonus. When items and spells come out, if you have the axe of the Dwarven King, and you give it to your dwarf, maybe it's going to be a little better for your dwarf than if or some turtle dude, call them Tortesians, but some turtle dude has this Dwarven axe, might not be as effective. So all this lore, we want it to be incorporated into the gameplay and the mechanics to give it that next level, and then creating different game modes based on the lore and based on land, where you travel around and you might have a boss fight, and who is this boss, and what are the factions that are involved, and how does it fit into the story. There's so much more to it. I mean, you can treat it as just a card game where you don't know what the heck's going on, you're just throwing cards on the table. I don't think that's as fun. I think the world we're building and the story behind it is a huge part of the gameplay and what's going on here. and I think people will enjoy it more. And as we continue to build the world and talk about it and make it more immersive, it's going to be beneficial, not just to the company for putting money in our pocket, but to the players, because it's going to be a more enjoyable experience, more immersive, and overall more fun, I think.
Yeah, that really makes sense. That's great to hear. I think if you know the lore and you know the stories behind it, and like you say, you enter a cavern and you're able to kind of play a certain card because you know in that environment that the orc is better at fighting, for example. I think that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. So
yeah,
for example, not saying this is going to be a card, but maybe in Rebellion you have a card called the Grimbardoon Commander, and he's some dwarf, and you're like, oh, I got a Grimbardoon Commander, let's throw him down on the table. Well, it doesn't mean a whole lot unless you know that same Grimbardoon Commander was the one who led his troops against the Chaos Legion in the city of Solus to liberate the Dragon's Guard that were being repressed by the Chaos Legion. I mean, there's so much more to it. So maybe you don't care. Maybe you're just playing your Grimbardoon Commander, or maybe it's this awesome dwarven hero that you know the story behind him, and you as a battle mage marched along with him to the gates of Solus to go through this adventure together.
So Grimbardoon Commander is, I think, the first official quote unquote leak of the coming Rebellion card.
So that's all alpha. So.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, I think you definitely answered the question, and definitely don't sleep on the lore.
I would not. I think it's pretty cool.
How much of a gamer are you? Have you always been attracted to the universe that's created within a video game or card game or board game?
I'm kind of a closet gamer. So being a military officer and a pilot, you're supposed to be kind of cool with a leather jacket and all that. So I was not an open nerd until recently. So now I've come out of the closet with my nerdy. Growing up, I played Dungeons and Dragons as a young kid. I was pretty nerdy. Went to high school, and I realized that wasn't cool anymore. So I wanted to be cool. So I kind of stopped doing some of the things in public that I enjoyed a lot. I played a lot of Nintendo. I'd make D&D characters just by myself, just because I thought it was fun to do the character building and the world building behind them. Then when I went to West Point, one of my escapes was actually video games. I played. You guys familiar with multi-user dungeons? They're called MUDs. So it's a text-based.
Man, you've got to connect with Rick on the Mountain. Shout out to Rick on the Mountain. Like D&D ticks the box. MUDs ticks the box.
So I got into multi-user dungeons. It was a role-playing game. I played a character named Shay Kayan. Maybe you'll see a card of him someday. But I was a Dark Knight, and I was a clan leader, and it was all in character. So it was role playing, and it was my escape from West Point, and it was also probably one of the reasons I didn't do so well, because I immersed myself in this alternate world where I didn't have to worry about what was going on in Cadet Land. But on the plus side, it's where I met my wife playing this game. We've been married for over 20 years now. World of Warcraft, I played that a lot, probably way too much when it came out. I was in a high-end raiding guild, and we're like server first raiding guild. If you guys ever played World of Warcraft, that takes like 4 or 5 hours every night throwing yourself at bosses over and over to get that first kill on your server. Complete waste of many years of my life that I wish I could have back. But it is what it is. It made me who I am, so for better or worse.
So, like with Nate as well, is that what Nate used to play with his wife as well? Was that the MUD?
So no, he did. What was it called? It was like World of Warcraft, but it was a different game. It was a precursor to World of Warcraft. I can't remember what it is now.
And was the game that you played? Could you hear people speaking, or was it just all text based?
All text. It was typing, say, I am a Dark Knight and I'm going to kill you. And then you type west, 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 west. And it would show the room description as you move west, and you type K Bob, and it would attack Bob, and he'd like trip, 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 kick, disarm. You have to type it all. So I get really good at typing fast. So maybe that was a good thing because I could type my books really fast.
How did you manage to drop the lines to meet your wife with all that?
That was my next question. What was that initial conversation like?
So she actually sought me out. I was a pretty big deal in this virtual world. But at one point we were role playing. I think she was a bad guy and I was a good guy. I forget. But afterwards I was like, hey, that was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. I think you're a great role player. So after I said that to her, she created a character to come join me. I didn't even know it was her at the time, but she created a new character and started interacting with me, and we ended up getting married in game. And then we met in real life in Panama City, kind of hit it off, moved in together, and then got married.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Muds. Yeah, that's right? Very cool. Original dating app.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't even know what are the dating apps so old? What are the dating apps these days? Tinder, that's right.
The original Tinder, yeah.
Yeah, Tinder, that's it. I missed all
so
that.
You mentioned about the your initial investments in Splinterlands, and just as you were saying, I sold my house. I thought you were about to say I sold my house to move somewhere, but then when you said you threw half of it into Splinterlands, that's some heavy commitment. Like what was it about the game that you kind of trusted to throw that much money at it?
Yeah, so I played a lot of games. I played World of Warcraft. I played these MUDs. I also played those stupid gacha games on your phone, like Disney Heroes. And I paid a lot of money to buy these stupid Disney Heroes or Star Wars Universe or whatever the hell it was. I'm talking about those games where you gotta pay money. Pokemon Go. Like, good Lord, how much money have I put into that? Even World of Warcraft. I spent so much freaking time playing this game to get the best weapons and the biggest swords. And when I was done, it was gone. It didn't mean anything. But with Splinterlands, I was like, good Lord, I can play this game. It's freaking fun. And when I buy this stuff, I can sell it and I can get my money back, or I can make a profit. And even if it goes down in value a little bit, I had fun doing it. So to me, it was like, it's no brainer. Why buy Mickey Mouse in Disney Heroes when I can buy the Lord of Darkness in Splinterlands? I've not bought a Lord of Darkness. And I do have a complete Chaos Legion set. I got 2 complete Chaos Legion set. I'm looking to finish my gold foil set, and I've got quite a few untamed cards as well. I rent out my sets, and then with the profit I make from that, I've been buying more cards and eventually dropping more in. But I bought a region. No, I'm sorry. I wish I bought a region. I bought a tract. It's kind of at the height of the bear. So I bought it for a lot of money, but I bought it with money that I had got from selling NFTs from other projects. So I wanted to get on land. I knew land was going to be a big deal, and I wanted a lot of it. So I bought a tract. I bought quite a few Runis to work that land. But yeah, I just everything about Splinterlands, the whole thing. And then just listening to town halls of how passionate Aggie and Matt and the rest of the team are, and their vision for this. And I imagine it all coming together in the future, where you have land and players are creating these items and spells and trading them with one another. If the bull market hits us and we get an influx of players, things are just going to explode. And if they stay the way they are now, I'm still perfectly happy, because I love playing Splinterlands. I love the stories behind it, and I love the community as well. I don't talk a whole lot on map chat, but I usually have it open on the side, just I just want to see what people are saying, what their sentiment is. So I see what people are saying, and I try to ensure that my efforts align with the expectations of the community as well.
Great, man. You so you mentioned you bought a tract. Where in Pretoria are you?
Let me flip over. I don't remember. Oh wait, I do know. It's right where Mock City is, so that was kind of purposeful. So I wanted it to be lore, and I think it's 65. It should be the first region in Central Fire. I believe it's 65.
Gotcha. Mandar Camden. Does that ring a
Yes,
bell?
that sounds correct. Let me just verify. My cards, my land, regions. Yep, Mandar Camden. I own whatever it is. Yeah. I get 100,
Are
100
you
plots on my family.
fully surveyed?
I am fully surveyed. I've got I was a little disappointed in that. I did get the bare minimums, but I was reminded that hey, we do have minimums. So I did get my one legendary and X number of epics and X number of um uh occupied and magical. I did get some rare magical land, which was cool. I think I've got 5 rare magical plots, so I'll hang on to those. And I also bought 25 individual plots just as a roll of the dice. And they ended up in Troughton, region 60. And I'm just selling all those to finish off my gold foil Chaos Legion deck.
Nice. And what is your like? You obviously you must have got a keep. So it's at 100 plots, right?
Yeah, I
You
got
got
to keep.
So what's your long-term plan for land?
So short, I'll start short term and work my way out. So my short term plan is to make sure I have all the cards that I can have for my land. I'm gonna have as many. I want all the workers and I want max level cards. Obviously, I'm not gonna have the very best, but I would at least like to have all at least all Chaos Legion commons. But I have other ones. I've got beta, untamed, etc., etc. So to have all my plots fully manned, have all of them have the energy, and then just start working them and cranking out item and spell cards until I mean probably start by keeping some for myself, selling some because I imagine at the beginning they're going to be probably lucrative as we start off, but building up until I'm able to max my items and spells and continue to move up the leaderboard because really that's what it's about for me. It's not so much the profits as being competitive on the leaderboards.
Mm. Is your plan to you mentioned that you've got a decent stack of Runi. I'm assuming that means your rune guard Breakingbenjamin. Is that the
It is. So I think
the appropriate title?
It's not huge. I guess it's kind of huge. I have 6, so I've got just enough. Rune guard's what, 5?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got 6, just because I've got that gold foil, which I lucked into. I happened to draw that myself. I didn't buy it. So I was like, well, I can keep this gold foil and then put my other 5 on the land. We'll see.
Mm. Yeah, it's such a tough call. Like I personally just have one, and I know for land it's going to be so beneficial, but man, when that baby gets rolling, like I played with him last night, he just took out I think 4 of the back line. It's just like it's such an awesome card. So at that point when I was just seeing him taking out all those 4 people, I was just like, part of me is just thinking, should I put him on land or like what do I do? But
Another one.
yeah.
You can use that one and put the other one on land. Perfect.
Well, I did think of that as well, but yeah, I don't want to go down that road.
You look at the prices of them too. I mean, I got most of mine for 0.19 ETH, and they're like 0.45 now, so it's like incredible.
Yeah, update for you. I just pulled it up. It's 0.55, 0.49 is the new floor.
You better get in while you can. It's crazy.
Jeez Louise, man. That's wild.
Not only that, but ETH is worth more now than when we started. So it's like it seems like it's 0.19 to 0.55, but USD value, it's a lot more than that.
Oh yeah, it's above 1,000 for the floor.
That's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah. What elements of land are you looking forward to? Because I know you've got you've got a guild plan B, so that's probably takes up quite a bit of time. But land is, if you've got 100 regions, that's definitely going to take up a little bit of your time as well. So like
100
what
plots one tract. I wish I had 100 regions. I got one.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Semantics.
Tomato.
Is there elements of the land that you're really kind of thinking, oh, can't wait for this now?
I don't know. It's kind of the whole ball of wax. It's gonna be cool to see how it all plays out. The how are the resources going to be used? So being a operations analyst, I was an analyst. I started to go to school to get a master's in operations research, and I did a semester, and I was like, I can just learn all this on the internet. Why am I sitting in class when I could just teach myself this and do other stuff I'd rather be doing, like writing a book? So the Army paid for it, but I ended up dropping out because I thought it was a waste of time. But being an operations analyst, I'm good with spreadsheets. That's not well known, but it's what I did for a job was optimization problems. So I'm looking forward to incorporating what I did in the military into Splinterlands, where I can take my tracks and I can be like, okay, if I create grain on these plots and some wood here, and I can buy my ore, how can I optimize everything for efficiency to make sure that I'm creating the max number of cards or maximizing my profit or whatever it is? So that's pretty nerdy, not only am I a gaming nerd and a writing nerd, but I'm also a numbers nerd. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think land is going to open up a whole new avenue for potential content creators to kind of come out of the woodwork. It's a completely different universe of gameplay that we're about to enter into, and Matt Clark is one that we've spoken with in the past a number of times, and he's been part of the Splinterlands 101 crew, pulling a podcast together every week from down in Australia, and I keep waiting for him to make an announcement around. He's got 2 regions. So looking forward to just what does land management at such a big level look like? And hearing from guys like you, I think is going to be a very interesting kind of shift in the dynamic of the content creator space, and how are you guys thinking about kind of constructing the teams that are manning your land and that sort of stuff? Have you given any thought to potentially? Are you going to be writing blogs about land management? Are you going to be putting your spreadsheets out there for the world to use? And
probably not. So I don't have the bandwidth for the blogs. I may share my spreadsheets if it feels like the right thing to do. But I'm gonna focus on building up my little empire. I'm gonna focus on creating cards and lore and splinterlore.com, and hopefully have some time somewhere where I can start working on my book again.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing about land is just like we talked before about working together as well, right? Like you've got to keep, so it's going to be in your interest that people around you are going to be beavering away, right? So I think that's
my keep is I own all the plots where my keep is. So it's I'm beavering away.
Yeah, get the beavering, bro.
Right, exactly. And maybe it takes so many freaking cards to max everything. So who knows? Maybe I'll end up delegating some stuff out and doing like a profit sharing thing with folks. Because I mean, right now, I even with 2 max Chaos Legion sets, almost done with my gold foil set, and all the onesies and twosies that I have from Untamed and Beta, I don't have near enough cards. So my focus in game right now is just more. I need more. And then once that's done, then I need to get the power cells, which are what 10,000 DEC each. Luckily, I have the 6 Runis to do that. But
yeah, it's a big hill we're coming up to.
And the cool thing about it is you don't need to do it all at once. It's not like I need all this DEC, I need all these cards. You can start working with what you have, and then use that profits to build your empire. So you don't need to be super rich to get involved in this. You can be a small player and then grow from there.
Bingo. Yeah, that's the name of the game. I think land opens up the potential for folks to really kind of burrow in for the long game. And every time we hear Matt come on town hall and speak about his vision for land, Secret of Pretoria is a 36-month adventure. It sounds like, at least. But to Wasco's earlier point of working with your neighbors, that not only applies to the plot level, but also the tract level and also the region level, right? So did you come in with, are you surrounded by some fellow Plan Bers, or are you guys?
I'm not. So we talked about it in guild chat and it just never came to fruition. I think I thought of it like too late. I was like, hey, we should get our tracks together. And most of my guild mates were like, oh, we've already got our track. We've already got our plots. I was like, oh shoot, I guess I should have said it earlier. So I knew where I wanted to be. I wanted to be where Mock City is, which was 65. So that's where I ended up getting. And I also heard Eggy say that he owned some plots in 65. So I was happy about that. So it should work out well.
Oh, nice. So for those people who are not into the lore, like why specifically Mock City?
So Mock City is according to the encyclopedia, before the Wizard's Veil was lifted, everyone thought that Pretoria was this little island, and you had Mount Mox, and on top of Mount Mox was the Golden Arena, which is where most of the arena games took place. And at the base of Mount Mox was Mock City, which is when people came to Pretoria, they all came through Mock City to go up to compete in the arena games. So Mock City is kind of a big deal for lore. It's kind of a mixed salad or melting pot or whatever you want to call it of different I'm going to say splinters. Everybody, and we can talk about that later, but when I say splinters, I mean the different factions, the different kingdoms and empires and nation states, etc. So it's a mixed salad of that, and it's kind of plays a pivotal role in the coming rebellion.
Nice.
Awesome. I want to kind of zoom back out to the lore real quickly with you, Joey. And is there a particular faction that you enjoy creating the story for more than others? Is there a personal favorite of yours?
I wish there was. Maybe I don't wish there was, but there isn't. I mean, they're all kind of my baby. Even the ones that we pulled from the encyclopedia. I know when you talk to Nate, he said the encyclopedia is not entirely canon anymore, but at the same time, a lot of heart and a lot of effort went into it, so we didn't want to scrap it. So I mean, I really like the kingdom. I called it the kingdom of Chimia instead of the kingdom of Chimeria, because the continent is Chimeria, the kingdom is Chimia. But yeah, I like them because they have the silver shield knights, and they're kind of like the knights in shining armor. They're really cool. You have the Belarusian Empire, which was ruled by the Lord of Darkness. So that's kind of the cool faction. It's ruled by a demon, and we split off. The Dark Eternals are kind of their own thing now. So they're almost like the Forsaken from World of Warcraft. They're these undead people who think that life sucks, and what better way to escape life than to become undead? Join the Forsaken. The Gobson, I think they're lightly modeled after the Mafia in the encyclopedia. I kind of went a little heavier, so they're very mafioso type goblins running this place called New Gobson in Pretoria. But all the really cool things in the encyclopedia, we've kept all that. We've moved it to Pretoria. We've kind of tweaked it. One of the things that was difficult with the encyclopedia was you had different people writing different parts. So if you read about the Chimeria, well, I don't remember exactly, but like one continent, say Chimeria had 2 moons, and then you go down to Mortis and you have 1 moon. It's like, well, why are the moons different? We're still in the same place. So there was you could definitely tell that it was written by different people in different parts, and so we wanted those inconsistencies to be cleared up. We wanted a clear list of, like a pantheon of God. What are the gods of this world? even what are the currencies? What do people in the Gloridax Empire use for a penny or a nickel or whatever? And it's probably not the same as they use over in the Phyrexian Empire from the Burning Lands. So all that detail, we want it to be, you know, super detailed in a real world that you can immerse yourself in. And if you want to turn it into a comic book or a video game or a role-playing game, we have that source material to build off of.
Man, I love the like bigger picture, long-term view that you guys are applying to this creative endeavor. I really hope, you know, I think we mentioned to Nate, I'd love to, I came into the game about 13, 14, 15 months ago, I guess at this point, early last year, 2022. And I had the encyclopedia had obviously come and gone by that point. But I love the idea of having the physical lore in our hands, whether that's in the form of something like a comic book or, you know, Encyclopedia 2.0 or something like that. I hope somebody in the community, and we've got, yeah, I don't need to remind you guys, but there's a slew of very creative, intelligent minds in our community, and I hope somebody kind of takes up the gauntlet and runs with the creative threads that you guys have kind of put together over the last year, and we see something like that come to fruition.
Yeah, me too. I think that would be totally awesome.
Yeah, I saw as well. I was looking for the encyclopedia of the Splinterlands, but I couldn't find it. I don't know. I was looking on Brave, but I did notice it's the same website, but it seems to be updated. Is that something that has just recently happened?
Yeah, so lore.splinterlands.com used to go to a different website. Splinterlore.com used to go to a different website, and we've now redirected it so it goes to lore.splinterlands.com. So I probably need to hang the encyclopedia somewhere where people can check it out.
Oh, I think definitely. I think that's just like Splinterlands lore in itself, right? I think just, you know, and it was also, I think the wonderful thing about that is just that it was made by the community, right? Written by the community.
Yeah, it was I don't know, it was really cool, and you could tell there was a lot of passion into it. And I mean, taken individually, what these people did was, I mean, it was amazing. It was the story behind the Dark Eternals and the Kingdom of Liberia, the goblins, all that stuff. So I think we've kept that heart and the essence of what was Encyclopedia as we move forward, and I hope that we did it justice. I think we did, but I think people are going to be pleasantly, not pleasantly surprised, but pleasantly pleased with how their initial efforts have evolved to where we are today. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, Nate said the same thing, that, you know, maybe people aren't going to be totally happy, but they will be pleased with the end result. But I think it's just something that had to happen, right? Like he actually did say the original lore was specifically just for cards, but, you know, this thing is grown now. That, you know, if you guys are talking about land and talking about role-playing games, it had to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so much more now.
Yeah.
Sorry, well, yeah, huge testament to what you guys are doing, and you know, I look forward to seeing the pages unfold as you guys continue to roll stuff out. Is there? I think we can start winding down here, Joey. Is there anything that you kind of want to mention to the crowd, to, you know, put your ear to the earth for this coming around the bend, or is there anything you're at liberty to drop?
Yeah, probably not. So being part of the narrative team, I mean, obviously we know most of what's going on with most stuff across Splinterlands because we have to incorporate it into our lore. So without giving anything away, I think we have big plans for the future. I think there's some very awesome things that are going to be coming out. I think soon. I know people are chomping at the bit, and we need more game modes. We need more different ways to play the game. That stuff is coming. I'm sorry, it's not next week. Or
I love the naggy voice that Mavchat has.
yeah, but I mean, sometimes I just want to get on there and be like, oh, this is coming and this is coming. Just you don't know how cool it is. It's just, oh man, I'm just so looking forward to it, and and when this stuff gets released, getting people the chance to dive into it, and giving the players what they want, because that's what we're about. It's Aggie and Matt have this vision for this game, and we're all along for the ride, and we've all bought into the vision, and we want to see it succeed. And it's become a real passion project for all of us, I think, at this point.
Yeah, it's great to hear you say that. I think we've talked about it ad nauseum, that everything that we do as kind of behind this podcast is for the community, and putting eyes on particular individuals in the community, and bigger picture. That everything about this game is so community driven, and it's such a cool. The weekly town hall, we've talked about that time and time again as well, and just the degree of transparency and the high degree of discourse that goes on between the crowd, the stakeholders, and the guys steering the ship, and the executive team. Is I don't know a single other company where you can have that level of involvement. And what we've heard about land, and I think Aggie equated it to handing the keys of the printing press over to the fans. It's just such a cool prospect, and it really kind of puts into a tangible, I guess, expression of all of that is handing that over to us to really dictate. Right. What are we making? Yeah,
I mean, there's so much. I think there's a lot to the game now, and there's going to be so much more, especially when land comes out. And I hear, you see Mav chat, and people are so salty. It's like, oh, I'm disappointed in land. This isn't land. This is you being able to reveal your cards. There's so much more to it. You're going to be able to create cards, and the company isn't going to make a dime for this. We're doing this for the players. It's printing items and spells, being able to use your resources. I mean, even if you don't create items and spells, you can sell the resources. You can trade the resources. It's going to be this entire community, and then entire economy. And then eventually, I mean, if you want to, then you can create the items and spells. You can use them in games. Now you have a new game mode. And I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I've theorized is it going to be if you play your cards, so you see your cards, see your enemy's cards, and then you both play items and spells and it resolves? Or is it going to be turn-based at that point, where you play an item and then your enemy plays an item, and then that round resolves, and then it proceeds turn-based? And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of game testing and gameplay involved in that, but I mean, that is just a whole nother level when it comes to gameplay. So you have the new game modes, you have a new gameplay, you have an entire, I mean, land's like a whole new game, the economy aspect of it. And then come into the avatars that Nate's mentioned, player housing, the campaign mode, story mode, boss mode. There's just so much that is looming on the horizon that I'm super excited about it, and super glad that I didn't invest in Axie Infinity when I started looking at games and I came here to Splinterlands. I mean, every day, every week, every month that passes, I realize I made the right choice. And I'm so glad I'm here.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm with you there, man. I think if Axie Infinity had been easier entry point, cheaper to enter at that time, I would have done, because I think it was just the initial cost that kind of put me off. So yeah, no, I'm also just very happy to found this game, like you say, just the people behind it and the community that we're privileged to speak to, yourself included, man. Sorry, Ben.
I was just going to say, with that massive laundry list of roadmap for the creative department coming your way, when is part 2 of When Titans Fall coming, man? 2030?
Yeah, so I haven't even finished unpacking my house yet. So once I get the house finished, unpacked, and I finally get some kind of battle rhythm for myself, then maybe I can start working on my book. But for now, I'm trying to find that it's my first time working from home, so I'm trying to find that work-life balance of spending time with my daughter, getting the house cleaned up, doing my Splinterland stuff, and kind of sucks that Splinterlands is so fun to do because I spent a lot of time. It's not like 5 o'clock rolls around and I close my laptop. No, I'm still here working on my lore, well into the wee hours of the night, most nights. So,
wow, I mean, what a perfect place, man, and yeah, where the line between passion and business gets blurred so dramatically. I mean that's yeah, what a great place to be in, man. Good for you.
Thanks.
So is there, apart from josephjohnfiction.com, is there anywhere else that people can reach you or you'd like to be reached? Or is there anything else you'd like to let people know?
No, I guess that's pretty much it. I think I have some social media links on there. If people want to check it out, that's cool. If not, that's cool too. But my links to my first 2 books are on there. And I think I still have the store where you can get one of my autograph books. I probably should take that down because I don't want to be, it's kind of cumbersome to be emailing a bunch of autograph books out to people when I have so much other stuff going on. It's not a huge profit for me. But it's on there. If someone wants to autograph copy my book before I take it down, it's available. And you can get my books on print, Kindle, and the 8th Day is on audiobook. As a disclaimer, if you decide to get the audiobook version of the 8th Day, I've made changes since it came out. I had a lot of like flowery analogies in it, which I thought were poetic and sounded really cool. My editor told me to get rid of them, and I was like, no, they sound so cool. And then I got reviews in on the audiobook. They're like, it's too flowery with too many analogies. I was like, damn it. So in the print book, I got rid of them, but I can't edit the audio because I hired a professional voice actor to do it. So they're still in there.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you took the time to narrate your story to the audiobook listeners.
I don't sound pretty enough. I hired some dude.
I don't know, that Mav chat voice is up there, bro. I think you're well, hey Joey, I think on behalf of the whole community, man, we certainly appreciate the high degree of passion that you bring to this project, and it's icing on the cake that you're invested in and want to see a good story be told for all of us that are involved. And yeah, I look forward to kind of going along this journey with you and see where the storylines take us and what kind of big surprises that we're going to be pleasantly pleased with in the coming months and beyond. So yeah, on behalf of the whole community, man, thank you for what you do and
likewise, what you guys do at this podcast, what the community does to get the word out. I mean, you gotta be pretty passionate about this to sit down and talk to me for what has been, holy moly, it's been 2 hours. I mean, you gotta be passionate about this, and it's getting the word out there and spreading the word about what you love. So what you guys do with the other people who do podcasts and interviews or blog posts about Splinterlands, getting the word out, it's so cool to see a community like this that's so passionate about a game that we're all involved in and invested in, and we all love.
No, man, thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, we both really appreciate that. It's just yeah, I'm just like to say I'm so happy we kind of like touch base. When I just threw that suggestion out in Discord, I wasn't expecting us to go. I wasn't expecting someone to reply, number one, and fortunately, I kind of read your bio as well.
Hey? I was just gonna ignore you.
No, I just said, just like, oh, it'd be great to kind of get in touch with this guy. Unfortunately, it happened. Cool. But yeah, reading your bio was fantastic, man. It's kind of opened up the conversation to different parts I wasn't expecting. So thank you for sharing all that as well. So yeah, and
My
And
pleasure.
listening to you speak as well, it kind of reminded me when we spoke to Nate. Nate spoke with so much passion, and when you speak about your work as well, you speak with so much passion. So it's, you know, for the community, it's fantastic to
Cool.
hear.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Okay, so for all of you out there, you have been listening to
The People's Guild.